Hi, thank you, Mike, and thank you everyone for taking the time to join us today. My name is Colin White. I'm the Senior Manager of Program Impact and Training at AmeriCorps Seniors, and it's my pleasure to discuss our national performance measures with you. AmeriCorps, which is formerly known as the Corporation for National Community Service, is the federal agency responsible for civic engagement. That means we lead civic engagement through service and volunteerism, through grant-making efforts, and national days of service here in the United States. I'm proud to say that we've helped millions of Americans improve their lives and the lives of their fellow citizens through service. And we do this mostly by working hand in hand with local partners to tap the ingenuity and can-do spirit of the American people to track our country's most pressing challenges. Our mission is to improve lives, strengthen communities, and foster civic engagement through service and volunteering. National service is an opportunity to volunteer your time and talent to make a difference in people's lives and get things done for AmeriCorps. Through AmeriCorps and AmeriCorps Seniors, individuals of any age can serve our country and their community by putting their valuable skills to use. As mentioned during previous trainings, the Senior Demonstration Programming, SDP, allows us to expand our program reach in a way that's different from our standard 3 programs. So, can you advance the slide, please? Before we begin, and as a reminder, here is the schedule for our training sessions. All of these sessions have been recorded, and so you can access them at any time. These sessions are designed to give you information to assist in increasing your knowledge of our programs, best practices, and how to respond to requests for funding. Here's our agenda for today. We're going to do a couple of things. I'll spotlight some competition basics. Then we'll touch on national performance measures specifically. For those of you who have attended our other webinars and in this series, you know that we really haven't been able to get there without talking about performance measurement, at least a little bit in some of them. And so we'll start by going over performance measures at the highest level, what they are, what we do with them, and then we'll look at work plans, the specific parts of the application that direct you to allocate your volunteers across those work plans. Here's some basic information about the Notice of Funding opportunity. As you can see, the applications are due at the close of business on February 3rd. And today we will be focus our efforts on understanding our performance measures. Our agency has a uniform set of measurements that are used across AmeriCorps Seniors and AmeriCorps. It allows grantees to measure and assess their effectiveness and communicate to key stakeholders. It allows AmeriCorps to tell a unified story about the impact of our programs. First, why performance measures? All in all, we are a federal program and we take our role as stewards of taxpayer dollars seriously. If you receive an AmeriCorps Seniors grant, you become a steward of taxpayer dollars as well, and that comes with certain responsibilities, including the responsibility to collect relevant data, measure your impact, and use the information to improve and increase your impact. So why do we measure performance? One reason is accountability. Performance measurement satisfies the needs of our funders and stakeholders, and this includes AmeriCorps participants, board members, community members, staff, and clients to see that the program or project is getting results. Performance measurement helps you communicate achievements in a way that funders and stakeholders will find meaningful and compelling. Another reason to measure performance is to determine if the change you thought would happen with your intervention is actually occurring. Performance measurement is a systematic way to collect reliable information about the intervention's implementation and progress towards outcomes. You can also use performance measurement data to spot and correct problems. Are you reaching the population you intended? Do some people require more or less intensive service to show a positive outcome? Even when an intervention is implemented exactly as planned, performance measurement can help you find ways to strengthen the intervention to make it more effective. And finally, performance measurement is a way to get feedback so you know if your intervention is making the expected difference and helps you decide how to make the most effective use of your limited resources. What are the benefits of using national performance measures? AmeriCorps can focus our efforts on national priorities, so areas of need where national service has had success and experience. National performance measures provide the data for a strong agency-wide narrative to tell the national service story. AmeriCorps will collect high-quality data and aggregate the results of similar interventions to demonstrate the powerful impact of national service. To ensure that AmeriCorps can aggregate the data and report results with confidence, guidance for the national performance measures includes definitions for the intervention, target population, output and outcome, and information on collecting the data and calculating the measure. Before I dive into our performance measures, I want to briefly discuss how AmeriCorps structures our measures. There are a couple of different components, and we'll walk through each of these components. As you see with the visual, it's kind of like a pyramid, and that they start off very broad at the base, and then they get more specific as you move up the pyramid. And so let's talk about what each one of these mean, and we'll start right down there with the focus area. So there are several AmeriCorps focus areas. For our stipend programs, the primary focus areas are education, economic opportunity, or healthy futures. For our non-stipend programs, AmeriCorps has 6 focus areas across all of our streams of service. The objective is a general category within each focus area. So if we take a look at the education focus area, it can be translated into 2 slightly more specific objectives: school readiness and K through 12 success. So we're getting a little bit more concrete in terms of the specific kind of activity that's going on, but granted, still broad. And now this is where we get to the specific measures, and they are reflected in the outputs and outcomes. For every national performance measure output, it must be paired with a single outcome. For each performance measure, applicants must select one output and one of the associated outcomes. Now let's dive into these outputs and outcomes. It is through outputs and outcomes that we're able to measure performance. We know that performance measurement is the ongoing systematic process of tracking your program or project's outputs and outcomes. Outputs are the amount of service provided. They measure the completion of activities and document the fact that individuals received services, products were created, or programs were developed. They answer the question, how much service did we perform? They do not answer the question, what changed as a result of the service provided? Outcomes reflect the changes or benefits that occur. Outcomes can reflect changes in individuals, organizations, communities, or the environment. They may include changes in attitude, knowledge, behavior, or condition. For example, changes within an organization may include an enhanced system to better serve community members. Outcomes answer the question, what difference did our service make for beneficiaries? Or how did the new system or product enhance the capacity of the organization to serve the community? In general, the most compelling outcomes address changes in behavior or conditions. However, what makes a change compelling is not just the type of change, but the magnitude or amount of change. And of course, the change should reflect the activity's intended purpose. In summary, performance measurement can show whether a change occurred. To find whether that change occurred because of the intervention, you would need to use other approaches such as evaluation methodologies. Now let's talk a little about the types of outcomes we might see, including changes in attitude or belief, knowledge or skill, behavior or condition. Outcomes regarding attitude or belief involve a change in thought or feeling. For example, a caregiver may feel that they have more social support after receiving respite services. Outcomes measuring knowledge and skill involve a change in understanding or ability, what a person learns. For example, a student improves their reading ability after attending a tutoring session. Outcomes addressing Behavior involves changes in actions such as conducts or habits, often in a specific context. For example, a student improves class participation, according to their teachers, after participating in a school mentoring program. And outcomes regarding condition involve a change in situation or circumstance. For example, a family is transitioned into safe, affordable housing after receiving referrals and counseling, or a community receives a new after-school program because a youth organization has been able to build its capacity to provide services. So let's review the performance measurement requirements in addition to the selected measure in the applicable focus area. All applicants must submit a work plan that results in an output and an outcome as specified in our national performance measures. All unduplicated volunteers or volunteer service years, VSY, for our stipend programs must be placed in the work plan. And the maximum cost per unduplicated volunteer or VSY in the performance measures may not exceed the allowable cost per volunteer or VSY. Now, I'm sure everyone is familiar with some of our key documents for this funding opportunity. The most important is the Notice of Funding Opportunity. The tools that we would use for performance measures are found in Appendix B for our National Performance Measure instructions and the Work Plan Development Worksheets. Appendix B, our National Performance Measure instructions, summarizes performance measurement requirements, and our Work Plan Development Worksheet allows you to plan your work plans outside of eGrants or grant management system. So Appendix B are instructions which include all of our applicable performance measures. Our national performance measures are like a menu, so you'll select the measure that best describes what you do. As you will see, they're organized in terms of our focus areas, and we do include instructions at the beginning, and so this is where you can go to learn more in depth about our performance measures. I also want to highlight a work plan development worksheet template, and this is designed to help you plan your performance measures. The worksheet can help you organize how you will fit your performance measures together with the volunteer activities. I recommend that you use these worksheets and instructions to map out your work plans, and then use the completed worksheets to transfer the information into our eGrant system, which I have to admit can be a little clunky at times. Now, all of this information is again in our performance measure instructions, but I want to walk through them with you. And because these following sections must be completed for all of your work plans. The first is the description of community need. The description of the community need must be completed for each output you select, and this need statement should explain the compelling need that will be addressed by your volunteers. Outputs, as I mentioned, outputs are the immediate result of the volunteer services. They're usually the account, number of children served. The output is selected using the pull-down menu in our eGrant system. The service activity or activities are the tasks that the volunteers will perform. The service activity description should explain what the AmeriCorps Seniors volunteers are doing in a way that shows how they will achieve the outputs and outcomes. State who the beneficiaries are and what the volunteers will be doing with the beneficiaries. State how often volunteers will provide the service and for how long, and state where the service will take place. For each output, you may select more than one service activity, and the service activities are selected using the pull-down menu in our eGrant system. For the number of unduplicated volunteers, or VSY. For stipend programs, this is the proposed number of volunteer service years that will be performed for each service activity. Each VSY or unduplicated volunteer can be counted only once when a volunteer is assigned to a service activity. For our non-stipend programs, this is the number of unduplicated volunteers. The total number of volunteers is you will enter the total number of volunteers engaged in the activities if you were to assign all of them according to each activity. In this way, volunteers can be counted more than once. For example, the same volunteer does two different types of activities, such as tutoring and mentoring. You can account for both assignments in this field. Targets. The target is the number that you anticipate achieving in the last year of your performance period. For example, if you think your volunteers will serve 50 children in the last year of the performance period, you would enter 50 as your target. Outcomes are the longer-term permanent change or improvement expected in the community due to the volunteers and their service. This outcome can be selected using the pull-down menu in eGrants. And finally, are the instruments that we use for tracking outputs and outcomes. This is where you would select the tool that you will use for data collection. And again, a list of instruments can be selected using a pull-down menu in our eGrant system. I want to come back to allocating volunteer service years across our work plans. What does that mean? So you will fill out a different work plan for each of the performance measures that you will use, and you will need to assign a certain number of unduplicated volunteers or VSY to that work plan. This funding opportunity requires applicants to demonstrate cost-effective practices in achieving performance goals through the services described in the proposed work plan. Applications must include work plans that meet the following minimum requirements. For volunteer assignments that are for our stipend programs, for every $7,500 in federal funding, at least one volunteer service year must be placed in a work plan that results in national performance measure outcomes for that selected focus area. For volunteer assignments that are for non-stipend volunteers, for every $1,000 in federal funding, at least one unduplicated volunteer must be placed in a work plan that results in a national performance measure outcome for that selected focus area. So if you can advance the slide, please. If we can go back one slide, I'm sorry, Mike. I want to take a moment to explain volunteer service year. A volunteer service year, or VSY, is a budget term which equals to 1,044 hours. For example, a volunteer service, a volunteer may serve 2,080 hours per year. And so it's the average of 40 hours per week. And this would equate to 2 VSY. Well, a volunteer serving 783 hours per week, so averaging 15 hours per week, serves as 3/4 of a VSY. It's a very simple way to calculate the number of unduplicated volunteers or VSY you need. Common arithmetic rules should be used to determine how to round unduplicated volunteers in outcome-based work plans. So grantee should round to the nearest whole number. Again, VSYs are only applicable to our stipend programs. Thanks, Mike. Can you please advance the slide again? So just to recap a couple of key points. AmeriCorps accepts applicants to use national performance measures as part of a comprehensive performance measurement strategy that relies on both performance and evaluation data to learn from their work and make tactical and strategic adjustments to achieve their goals. Applicants are required to use the identified performance measures outlined in this notice for more information. And I would refer you to Appendix B, our performance measure instructions, for more information. Finally, this funding opportunity requires applicants to demonstrate cost-effective practices in achieving performance goals through the services described in the proposed work plan. So applications must include work plans that meet the following minimum requirements. For volunteer assignments that are for stipend volunteers, for every $7,500 in federal funding, at least one volunteer service year, or VSY, must be placed in work plans that result in a national performance measure outcome for that selected focus area. And for volunteer assignments that are for non-stipend volunteers, for every $1,000 in federal funding, at least one unduplicated volunteer must be placed in a work plan that results in a national performance measure outcome for that selected focus area. So we have a brief poll right now. When thinking about your output and outcome targets, you should base your targets on A, what you think is a big enough number for AmeriCorps, B, an assumption that you'll reach everyone in the community and that the programs will have its intended effects on 100% of the recipients, C, a realistic estimate of how many people you can expect to reach and the realistic impact of the program on those people informed by your own research, your potential partners, and the input of others who know your community and the field, or D, a dartboard. And so I'll give it just a brief moment for people to select their choice. Great, thanks, Mike. So yes, we are mostly correct. It should be a realistic estimate of the number of people you expect to reach. And that should be informed by research, potential partners, and the input of others. A dartboard, I would not choose that when selecting targets. Thanks, Mike. So now I will turn it over to questions. And please use the Q&A function found at the bottom of this Zoom. So let me open up the Q&A, and I will start with the first question from Lenora, who asks, because this is a demonstration program grant, are we able to propose projects outside of the traditional focus areas, especially if we see a growing need in the community in that area? That is a great question. I would refer you to our funding priorities as seen in the notice of funding opportunity on our website. It's our funding opportunities that tells a potential applicant which focus area we would like them to focus on. So Taylor, your first question, explain the difference of community need in the narrative section and the difference of the community need in the work plan section. And so the description of the community need in the work plan section should be completed for each output you select, and the need statement should explain the compelling need that would be addressed by your volunteers. As you saw with the slide with the work plan example, this isn't a lot of text, and so it's really a summary. However, the narrative section in the application provides more opportunity for you to further explain the community need that your program attends to address. And for more information about the specific definitions and what we're looking for within the application, I would refer to our notice of funding opportunity and our application instructions. I will then look to your second question, Taylor. Can you please restate output targets? This will be the number of, for example, children reached through tutoring. And you're exactly right. So outputs are the amount of service provided. And so they measure the completion of activities and document the fact that individuals received the services, right? And so if you are tutoring or planning to tutor 50 children, 50 would be your target. This is a little bit different than outcomes. So outcomes reflect the changes or benefits that may occur. So of those 50 children that you propose on tutoring, how many of those 50 will have a positive change in attitude, knowledge, behavior, or condition? Excellent. And let me, your, right. And so Taylor, the work plans for 24 months. So if we're engaging duplicated volunteers and we attribute them to our 3 service areas, our output targets will be beneficial to the service activity. Yes, the work plan is for 24 months. Yes. So somebody asked how do we know if we want stipend or non-stipend volunteers? You can further look at the difference between stipend and non-stipend volunteers in our notice of funding opportunity and the documents listed on the website. And so they can provide a little bit more insight and guidance than I think I'm able to provide right now at the call. A next question is about the application ID number, as well as a question about printing out a hard copy of the e-grant application for the SDP application to print out and share with their team. Both of those questions are a little bit beyond the scope of today's conversation, but each of them can be answered on our website through the frequently asked questions document that we have up there. So Suzanne, you asked what's the difference between seniors RSVP and senior demonstration projects for those not receiving a stipend? There's honestly not much difference. Again, I would refer you to our notice of funding opportunity, which has a little bit more information on the senior demonstration programming. So Cece, you've asked if since volunteers will not be working with the program director and salary for that position is included, do we count the money as part of the $1,000 plus one unduplicated volunteer, even though they have no outcome impact on that decision? Let me see if I can kind of take a stab at this, right? So if you're looking to find, you write out your proposal, and you have the funds that you think is needed to run an effective program, right? Say if you looked and say if you're requesting $400,000, right? What you would do if depending if you're stipend or non-stipend volunteers, is you would divide that $400,000 in requested federal funding by either $1,000 if they're non-stipend volunteers or $7,500 if they are stipend volunteers. And that would tell you how many, what the minimum requirement for unduplicated volunteers or volunteer service years must be included in your work plans. Someone asked VSY equals 1,044 hours for 1 year. or for the 2-year term of the grant, let me be very clear, VSY equals 1,044 hours per year, right? So that is per year. Jed asked, can you please explain how the 6-month planning period fits into all of this? And I think this may be a little bit beyond the scope of today's presentation, Jed, but I will say, for thinking about targets, you should be thinking about how many people you want to reach at the end of this performance period. We have another question. Unstipend volunteers, for every $1,000 of federal funding requires 1 volunteer. Does that require them to serve 1,044 hours, or they can be 1 a week? So the 1,044 is only in reference to stipend volunteers. For our non-stipend volunteers, the hour requirement per volunteer can be found in our notice of funding opportunity, as well as the frequently asked questions document. So another question about 50% stipend and 50% non-stipend volunteers. Again, this question could be answered in our notice of funding opportunity, as well as our frequently asked questions. And so Taylor, you've asked that clarification. So the outcome target will be the number of children that actually realize the benefits as compared to the output target, which is the number of children served. That is exactly correct. You have the correct understanding. So thanks for asking us so we can clarify that. So Liz, you've asked, because this is a demonstration program grant, are we able to propose, for example, healthy futures with the objective access to care? In our case, we hope to serve people with severe mental health issues versus people with developmental disabilities. The outcome would be the same, i.e. number of individuals receiving services that promote inclusion. Thank you. Yes, so one of our priority programmings is access to care through that Healthy Futures focus area. And so, we're specifically asking for applications related to increasing access to care, public health education opportunities in hard to reach communities, and or historically underserved communities as well. And so you would be able to propose that, yes, Liz. One question, what happens if I can't find enough qualified volunteers? I'll be honest with you, I really can't answer that question on today's call. That's a hypothetical. I will say is that we provide a lot of resources to our grantees and specifically to our new grantees. And each grantee has a dedicated portfolio manager that will work with them and provide individualized training and technical assistance. And so our hope is that through our resources and individualized support, we can work to craft and implement a plan with you to find qualified volunteers. And so the last question from Loretta, if you have 2 volunteers who can only serve 522 hours, can that equate to 1 VSI? Yes, yes. So again, volunteer service here is a budget term that equals 1,044 hours. Francis, you've asked, should the dollar amount we're requesting funding on my grant application be for 1 year or for 2? If the work plan reflects both years, it's my understanding the request is for both years. And again, all information, I would really like to refer you back to our notice of funding opportunity, which really includes all of the uh, information about budgets, um, um, and they can answer it in a much more in-depth way, right? But I will say that the project and budget period is for 2 years, 24 months. And so applicants will receive funding for 2 years upfront to support programming. And so what this will mean is that an application would not be needed for a second year of funding, though fiscal and programmatic reports would still be expected on a regular cycle. Will we get penalized if we don't get enough volunteers? And I don't want us to think about it from a penalty perspective, but what we encourage is through research of your community, input and feedback of various community partners, that you draft an application with targets and volunteer counts that you feel is reasonable and feasible, and then we'll work with you to provide kind of the resources and support to make sure that you are successful. Right, and so I'm seeing no open questions. I will pause for a brief moment, get a drink of water, see if there are any additional questions. And Callan, if I missed any, please let me know.
No, we've answered all the ones that have come through. As you want to take a look at the chat. Oh, actually, one just came in. I did post a frequently asked questions link in the actual chat box as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, I see Taylor's question about the non-stipend volunteer time. Taylor, if you are looking through our notice of funding opportunity and our FAQs, right, and you aren't receiving questions, we do have a contact person that you can send questions to, and it's a competition email. And all questions can be submitted to the inbox to receive responses to it. And I will see if I can put it in the chat, Callan, but it's also included in our FAQ, and you already beat me to it. Never mind. Thank you. So it doesn't look like I see additional questions. Before I leave, I want to say from the bottom of our hearts here to AmeriCorps seniors, just how thankful we are and how appreciative we are of not just your interest in this funding opportunity, but more importantly, the tremendous amount of work that you and your organizations have done over the last several years. We know it's been a difficult and trying period in a lot of cases, and we do appreciate it, and we look forward to the opportunity of working with some of you more closely in the near future.